Hello, everyone. Can you hear us?
Do I need to touch the thing? Okay, audio. Good. Okay.
Perfect.
Yay.
Okay, welcome
It's all kinda
to
working.
our 18th Service Fabric Community Q&A.
That's a year and a half.
Wow. Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. We have a special guest with us this morning who's going to kick this off for us, for you guys. We want to talk about the Fast Track for Azure Preview program. So Sam Portello is with us. And Sam, I'm going to upload your deck so you can start.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Make sure it's here. Well, sorry, guys, the deck just went away.
Okay. Well, no problem. I can
Yeah,
certainly
you
just
just join?
speak to it.
Yeah, just start going.
Join
We'll
me.
figure that out.
Are you on the meeting?
Yeah, Wendy's joined.
Just take over presenting.
I'm not on it.
A great start to it.
Yep, smooth as always.
It was too good to be true when the audio is working.
Yeah,
I can quickly
yeah. It was
join.
when the audio was working.
Yeah, it's only a
that
matter
was
of time.
Too smooth. Okay. Oh,
Remember, it's more and more join, so I guess.
that's fine. And then content. No, not there yet.
Just a yes.
I'd love to.
Or you can start it, I'll find your deck.
Just make sure I got no sound on.
It'll already be chaos.
Cool.
All right,
Go through.
we'll find out in a second. Start talking. There you go.
There you go.
All right. Awesome. Well, again, thanks for having me. Just wanted to tell you guys about an exciting program that launched over the summer from Azure Engineering. The goal of this is a customer success program, and our goal is to help you get on board to Azure quickly, achieve your business objectives, and build your solutions. So again, thanks for having me today. I mean, I want to just highlight a couple key benefits, talk about next steps, and then I'll let you kind of get back to the 18th month anniversary call here. So it's direct assistance from Azure Engineering team. We work hand in hand with your partners if you have them already, or we can hook you up with partners specifically to help you build on microservices. We've got best practices and tools from customer experiences and the industry best practices that we want to share with you guys. And so that's the quick highlights of the program. We usually do this in a couple key phases, doing a design review, help you kind of develop a vision and figure out where you want to go with Azure. We'll help you set up proof of concept and then deploy that solution into production. We just launched over the summer, so we're still in preview, but we've got some criteria here. We are live in US, Canada, Australia, UK, Western Europe, more regions coming. We typically work with customers that are projecting to consume about $5,000 a month and don't already have the assistance of a cloud solution architect. Here's a quick look at an engagement journey. We go through, again, planning, setting up, developing, deploying, and monitoring. We are looking forward to working with you guys, and for next steps, what we'd really love to do is just have you guys visit azure.com/fasttrack, get more program details, and then work with your account team to kick off a fast track engagement.
Yeah, questions at the bottom there. Is there any charge for it?
There is no charge to this.
Cool.
Good job. Entirely free.
We like free. We like free.
No charge. Exactly.
Free's good.
Right.
One more service we
Why
offer.
wouldn't I get two free?
There's no charge. It's free 99.
Technically, yes.
Man.
Free 99.
Jeez.
Haven't heard that.
I gotta get onto that one.
Okay,
All
well,
right.
thanks so much, Sam.
Sure.
Thanks, Sam.
All right, with that then.
On with the show.
Yeah, we'll dive into questions. So just as always, we got all the product team in the room, and effectively just post your questions in the window, and we just go down the list. And this is an Ask Us Anything question session, anything from, simple questions to whatever you think is important to solve your solutions. Okay.
All right, start. We'll get the desktop.
So who's first?
Simplify upgrading, I think.
Simplify upgrading, yeah. Is there a way to simplify upgrading of an application to cluster
I mean, if I change some piece of code and manually check all the modules affected, edit the manifest in VS, increasing the version numbers, can it be automated? If you're using a CI/CD environment like VSTS, that automates it. The Service Fabric build task in VSTS will do this for you, so it'll go and bump up all those version numbers for you, if that's what you're looking for. Other than that, I mean, it's really up to your deployment pipeline to do that automation. So I would recommend looking at VSTS for that.
Yeah, VSTS does that for you, and then otherwise, there are build scripts that you can take out.
Yeah,
or there's build scripts from that as well, which are open source. So that's what we see most people do. But if VSTS is your solution, that's great. I think the other solution that does it as well is Octopus Deploy is the only one that integrates.
Yeah, and then we have a Jenkins plugin too that might do it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but you have to do more work inside there.
Yeah.
Is there any way to do it just with Visual Studio? Or okay, I can check also VSTS, but in Visual Studio it's only manual, like the way I'm doing, correct?
Yeah, the only thing Visual Studio has is there is just for kind of doing debugging and local development, you can change the application deployment mode. If you right-click your application project and hit Properties, you can set the deployment mode to auto upgrade, and that just all that does is every time you hit F5 or hit Control F5 to relaunch your application, it'll perform an upgrade instead of just a delete and redeploy. And that'll automatically bump up all the version numbers. It'll append a timestamp to it, but it doesn't actually change your manifest files. So it's just for that one deployment. It's just a way for Visual Studio to kind of upgrade the application locally. Otherwise, you have to go in either through the UI, you can go in and change the version numbers and all your packages, or you can go into the manifest manually.
That's the way I'm doing it now. Manually, I edit the manifest in Visual Studio. I wonder if there was a solution inside Visual Studio to automate this, but it's okay. I mean,
not inside Visual Studio, no.
In VSTS, there is.
Okay. Okay, great to know. You send me the search. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. That was. Okay, is it possible to get notified?
I think that's it.
Yeah, it's possible to get notified for any service instance will be taken down by Service Fabric, so I can update my load balancer.
So the way that we normally see this done is that what will happen is that Service Fabric will call close on any communication listeners that you have. And what you can do is have a communication listener that is specifically responding to the Azure Load Balancer health probes. And then you immediately close down that communication listener so that the health probes start failing. And then after 5 or 10 seconds, you can shut down the main one because you know that calls have stopped coming in. That gives you an opportunity to drain out any remaining calls that come in before the Azure Load Balancer's health probes start figuring out what's going on. That's normally how we'd see people build it.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Sure.
Yes.
So on that, number one, I'm not running in Azure, I'm running on premise. But so the idea is that it has to be built into each of my applications that do this. I can't have a general, like right now I use the service notification filter matched event that tells me afterwards, and I just have one service that's catching those. Mm-hmm. What you're proposing, I'd have to build into each instance that's running that would catch that event and then tell the other listener to wait. Is that the idea?
Well, yeah. So
I guess I didn't quite understand what you're saying.
So the problem you have is that there's nothing about draining that Service Fabric doesn't actually help you with. The problem usually is that calls keep showing up. So when we call close on the communication listeners, right? The thing is that now you're racing where there are some calls that are already in flight that are being processed. There's no problem with draining those out because close is async, right? So you can take time to finish whatever calls you're processing. That's no problem. The other problem that you usually have, though, is that there's some gateway or load balancer or something else that is routing calls to that service, and it doesn't know that service is already closed. And so what you want to do is have some back pressure or signal that goes from this service that is getting shut down to that gateway or whatever, so that it knows to stop sending things here. And then that gives you, those calls now go somewhere else, and you don't have to worry about them showing up here at a service, which is just going to fail them because it's already closed.
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
What I was asking is, does Service Fabric have that signal built into it Is there some way that it can tell me that it's sent this close signal, or that right before it sends the close signal?
Yeah, we
so that I
don't
can
have
go
that.
update my service?
That's a kind of global piece of information that we don't have, because there's a bunch of reasons why a service could get closed. Some of them are known ahead of schedule, but a lot are not. And so
Right.
that's kind of why there is no one magic signal. So that's.
And obviously, if the power goes out on the node, there wouldn't be an expected message. It's more the ones where it's a rolling deployment, the normal things. I was hoping there was some kind of event that would tell me.
The other thing is that normally we don't sit in your communication path a lot, so you'd have to figure out how to deal with it per communication thing. Like if it's HTTP, right, then that's just something that is, like for example, the Azure Load Balancer understands what an HTTP failure code looks like, and it drives that health check based on that. But per communication style, you actually have to figure out how to implement this. So we don't have a generic signal because we don't have a global way to know when this is happening, and there's no generic signal.
But you still send the close request in the end. Like when it's doing a rolling deployment or the nodes receive a shutdown request.
That's a case where we
Service
could.
Fabric.
That's a case where we could. But because we don't have a technical one, we haven't built it.
Okay. So you said that so basically the way to get this is to inject something into each service that basically says, I'm shutting down, and send a notification out.
Yeah. Or that go ahead.
But it's not really notification. That's why most proxies and load balancers have some concept of probes, health probes or health checks or something. So they're constantly pinging some endpoint in your service, just asking if you're still alive. So the idea is, since the service gets the signal to shut down, what it would do before it completely shuts down, it changes that endpoint that's being probed by the proxy or by the load balancer, and it starts setting back, closed, or just stops responding or whatever. That gives the proxy or the load balancer a couple seconds to take it out of rotation, and then you can shut it down.
Right.
Okay.
So you're really
so
just
the close continue.
You're just kind of delaying the shutdown of the service by a second or two, just to allow the load balancer or the proxy, the time that it needs to take it out of rotation.
All right. I think the part I was missing is that you can take a close request inside your service and kind of hang on for a minute.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you don't want to do it too long because you'll be holding up the system. So you don't want to hold up.
Right.
Hold up the platform too long, but a few seconds is generally fine. You'll get a warning if it's 4 seconds or more. You'll get a little warning that pops up. Warnings won't cause any issues or anything. It's just sort of a notification for you. But that's one way to do it. So yeah, like some proxies, for example, they work on the concept of eventual consistency with regards to endpoints in the service. So they have a set of endpoints on the service, and they're constantly probing them and sending traffic. And if a health check fails on one, then it'll kind of start taking it out of rotation. So that's what we mean. So as an upgrade's rolling through, you just delay it for a second and start sending a HTTP 500 or just close or whatever. Let the load balancer take it out of rotation and then allow the upgrade to proceed.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's go to Marcine's question. I understand how fault domains are handled across regions. However, I have a lot of concerns about upgrade domains. Those are incomparable across unpaired regions. How is this going to be handled by Service Fabric?
Upgrade domains are just tags, so there's no real comparison or anything like that you need to worry about. So you just end up with either a bunch of different fault domains, or a bunch of different upgrade domains, or the same standard set of 5. Number 5, standard 5 is what you'll end up with. We recognize that that's not as flexible perhaps as you'd want, and so we're thinking about ways to make that more flexible, but there's really nothing to worry about in terms of UDs. FDs are the problem fundamentally today.
Okay.
Don't miss the plan maintenance question. The second one.
Plan maintenance. Service Fabric going to listen for plan maintenance events and preemptively redeploy VMs. The plan maintenance side of things comes through, I'm pretty sure it comes through the coordination protocol we have with them.
It should.
Yeah, it's not quite those same plan maintenance API events, but we do watch for changes that are going to happen in your environment and react to them. That's part of the durability level stuff that we make you choose, is the gold, the bronze, silver, gold. is how long we can push back on those maintenance events if they look like they might impact your workloads. So it's not specifically that API, it's a different internal channel, but yes.
And service run Windows and Linux containers inside the same cluster, when all services in the same cluster are running Windows Server, or containers, sorry. The only choice you have here is in that Windows Server 1709 build, in preview mode, you can now run Linux containers of the Windows Server. So you can stand up a Windows Server set of machines on 1709 and launch Linux containers running inside them.
Mm-hmm. So you can't, you just need the latest build of
You just
Windows
need the
Server.
build.
Latest built in Windows Server, and I believe that that's a form of Hyper-V communication, or containerization as well, right?
You don't have to use Hyper-V as long as you've built the base image to be 1709 images that run inside them all. You should just be aware that existing Windows Server 2016 images, in order to run on Windows Server 1709, need to run in Hyper-V containers. If you want to run them as just Windows containers outside Hyper-V, you have to rebuild them onto the base Windows Server 1709 image. And then on 1709, you can, but that's just the Windows images. Inside 1709 cluster running on Windows, you can also just launch Linux containers. But that's just in preview. Okay, I've been able to constrain a reliable service to a single CPU, but is there a way to do percentages via resource management? For example, I have 4 different independent service instances all running on 2 CPU nodes, and I want them all to take 25% of the CPU.
Yeah, so the way that you would do that is with the CPU shares in the resource governance controls. So when you're setting up the services, you would define in resource governance their CPU cores, so you can assign whole cores, but if you want to go to subcore, you can do that too. So that's all wrapped up in the resource governance stuff.
You should try and, that's in the doc somewhere?
Yeah, it's in the docs. I can find it and paste it in.
Paste the link to that.
I looked in the docs on that one, and there was a part that let you do shares on code packages, but not on the service. The service only had CPU cores and memory. That I could see in the doc.
This is where it gets a little weird, because what you'll end up with is you would set the limit to be per code package, and then you would use combinations of placement constraints and the sorry, I'm losing my mind. The exclusive process activation modes, so that all your service little objects end up in different processes, and that way you know that each little object is only getting 0.25 of a CPU or something like that.
Yeah, this is we have two different host activation modes, right? So the default one, if you don't touch anything, we pack all of the, if you're a stateful service, all the replicas of the stateful service, if they land on the same node, they'll share a host process. And
all my services are stateless in this case.
Okay,
Right.
so even if you're stateless, if you create multiple instances of the same service type, by default, they'll also share a host process. So they're activated just as a .NET object that gets created in a host process. So if you do that, there's no way to really track the CPU usage of each individual object.
And
so
I'm talking like.
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep interrupting. I apologize. I was talking like 4 separate applications, like application 1, application 2,
Okay.
application 3. They each have, there's 4 of them running on the node, and I have 2 CPUs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a way using the CPU cores to limit them.
But then
down
you've
to
got,
half a
how many
core.
services do you have inside of that application? Each of those
Just one.
applications? Just one.
They each have one.
So then what's going to happen is you just set it at the code package layer and you'll get exactly what you want. Because there's only going to be one code package per service, per application activated on that machine. So that'll be exactly the limit that you're looking for.
All right, I'll give that a try. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. When are we going to be able to run containers in the service fabric on Windows 10 desktop machine?
Yeah, we're getting pretty close. There's a couple issues with the Docker runtime that we're trying to work around right now, but that's pretty close. So you should expect that fairly soon.
We did a preview for it, didn't we?
Yeah.
So if you go to our blog, our team blog, we did a preview for that to show inside VS.
Yeah. There are issues with Docker runtime on Windows that we're trying to work around. It's mainly exposing that daemon port because there's no, from what we can tell, there's no programmatic way to do it, and then it opens up an unsecured channel, which we don't like. So we're trying to get around those things, figure out a way to secure it, and then also activate it programmatically. So it's coming fairly soon. Just a couple last issues that we're trying to work around.
So hopefully.
Same with the next question, India, when support for .NET Standard 2.0 will be out of pre-release. Yeah, so same thing there. Just a couple last things we ran into with .NET Core specifically. There was one on Linux that we managed to work around. And there were a couple issues on Windows that popped up in our GitHub repo. So before we call it release, we're going to make sure that those are all cleared and that we're bug free. So fairly soon, just the last couple bugs that we're trying to fix up. Plans to support using attached disks on VM scale sets to add storage capacity. So you can already do that today. You can actually add additional disks using either managed or unmanaged disks if you want. That's perfectly possible today. The trick is there's a place in your, if you're deploying on Azure, there's a place in your template, in your ARM template, where you specify the route at which the cluster is actually running. So there's a drive that you set by default. I think it uses the D drive on the VM. So if you're using a small disk size VM like a DS3 or something, you only get 20 gigs of capacity. So the trick is when you attach the disk in your ARM template, you add an attached disk. You have to run a script, a PowerShell script or something to kind of mount it, to mount a volume, and then format it. And then you just change that route to point to the new attached disk. So that's all possible today. It just requires a little bit of setup in your ARM template. I'm not sure if we have an example of that up anywhere.
No.
Yeah, you probably want to, I guess, notify whoever does support about that, because they said that simply wasn't possible.
It's
Okay.
possible, it's just not the default that we set it up with.
Yeah, doesn't do it by default, but you can definitely do it.
By default, we set up local disk for all the state and deployment on your disk because that gives you the perf and throughput. If you want to change it to the disk, you can, but you just have to change that data route, point to manage disks. You just have to make sure that you test your performance and make sure that it fits with your needs because it does have some level of additional impact on writing for that.
Yeah, we'll get in touch with support, make sure that they're aware of that.
Yes.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Those dash disks. We're in a web.config file stored in a deployed reliable WCF service. Where is the web.config file stored in a deployed reliable WCF service?
It's not stored anywhere special. It should just be wherever. It should just be in your application output directory, bin directory.
Yeah,
as long as it's copying there, it should just be local.
Yeah, I checked to make sure it's ending up in your bin output.
Yeah.
Because we just pick up from there. It shouldn't be anything special.
And if it's not showing up, that's a little strange. You did say to copy always.
Yeah, if you said it's copy always and it puts it into the package, the only thing you have to make sure is that you have a default working folder where it gets written to.
Well, you're just putting it next to the exe. That's where it picks it up from by default. So it's a little curious.
Sorry, I was just going to ask. I put this. I went to the deployed location to the code folder.
Yeah.
My application.code.version, and it wasn't in there. When you say check the bin, do you mean like in my local compiled area?
Yeah, if you just build locally and then look to make sure it's there, and then on the application project inside of Visual Studio, right-click Package and make sure it ends up in the package result locally before you go upload it anywhere.
Okay.
I would check those first. We don't do anything special here. It should just be getting copied around. If it's not, then it's some weird Visual Studio tooling thing that's somehow filtering it out.
You can choose to specify an alternative directory inside your settings. Like
Yeah, it's possible it's getting copied somewhere else,
So
and then
you
that's
just
somehow getting
check.
left out. But
just check your manifest to say if it's a working folder.
It is in my bin folder, but it's not in the code folder. I don't know where my package is yet off the top of my head, so I can't say on that one.
Okay. Check your if you check in your Visual Studio, you have an application project. That's the SF project. If you look in there after you've built and packaged the whole thing, there's a PKG directory that gets created, and that's where your application package ends up. And the application package, that's your final build output, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing that you hand over to Service Fabric, and then we go and activate it. So check in there. You should see an application manifest, and then a directory which has all of your service packages, and then inside your service packages you'll see your service manifest, and then the code directory should be the actual build output of each of the service project. So it should be in there. If it's not showing up in there, then that means Visual Studio is not copying it for some reason. But once it's in there, we take that as a whole, and we don't touch anything after that. So you just have to make sure it ends up in there.
Get in there by whatever means. All right, thanks.
yeah,
exactly.
I mean, post build copy step if you have to, but
you shouldn't have to, but make sure it's actually if you're doing a Visual Studio project, CS project, make sure that web config is actually in the It's actually referenced in the CS proj. I remember there was something about if you have a file just sitting in your project directory, but it's not actually referenced in the CS proj, then Visual Studio won't copy it over. So just make sure it's in there too.
It definitely is, or it wouldn't show up in Visual Studio with a WCF type package.
Yeah.
It shows the ones that are in the CS proj file.
Okay. Yeah.
But, okay. Now I know where to debug into the build of this package folder. I'll dig into that and figure it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, .NET Standard 2.0, yes.
Yep, we covered that one.
If I configure the target replica count to 5 and min replica count to 1, does it mean I just enable fully asynchronous replication?
No.
Did Marcin ask that?
Yes.
Marcin.
Yeah. No. It's very orthogonal. So all you've done is made your service very unreliable in the case of failures. I would not touch that at all. 5.5 or 5.3 at a minimum, please.
Stateful service format. Stateful service is now being used for backends, SCM for Windows and RocksDB or Linux, although it's not actually RocksDB anymore. Are you migrating to new native reliable services cross-plat? Are backup formats compatible across all 3 backends?
So yes, they are becoming common, and no, they are not compatible today. So you can't move from one to the other.
So, but we do have a single store.
We do have a single store, so like they're all converging, but you can't do a backup and restore across them today.
Yeah. Are there any documented best practices when I've split everything deployed to service fabric by application or just by splitting up individual active or services? So what are the best practices between having things at an application level or at a service level?
There's no single best practice really. It depends on what you want to get out of it. So the application and service difference, mainly with applications, are sort of everything rolls up to the application level. So for example, when you perform an upgrade, you target an application, not a specific service. Health events always bubble up to the application. And then isolation levels tend to be very clearly defined at the application level. So one application is always isolated at the process level from another application. Services have the option of sharing host processes and doing some other funny stuff. Beyond that, it's really up to you. I mean, there's a lot of different patterns you can follow. So for example, you can say that within an application, services can be kind of coupled together. So one service might know, for example, how another service is partitioned, and that might be kind of an internal detail of the application. But another application outside of that would only call into that application through some well-known API and wouldn't know anything about its internal partitioning details. So it's not, there's no real one best way over another. It's kind of up to you and what your project is structured like and what your teams are structured, how your teams are structured, and how you want your Visual Studio project structured. But there's really no best way.
Okay, what does the introduction of AKS mean for Service Fabric and as a container service? Not really too much. I mean, what we just have to understand is that Microsoft is heavily invested and deeply invested in building out on both Service Fabric and on now Kubernetes. What really has happened inside Azure Container Service land is that they've decided to consolidate down to focusing mostly on Kubernetes as the main orchestrator of choice from the OSS world of things. The way we can think of Kubernetes is there's a choice of people, particularly from the OSS side of things, who want to build together their own platforms and put together the pieces that they want. And we recognize that there's a set of customers there, but that doesn't detract from anything from the huge investment we continue to put inside Service Fabric. And in many ways, Service Fabric does a lot of the things that AKS does today in terms of upgrade, run the underlying runtime on the machines and provide you all those capabilities. So we just see that some customers want to come from an OSS Kubernetes direction, and we give them that choice.
Yep. I mean, I think the key thing is that Microsoft is heavily invested in Azure being the best cloud for whatever workload that is. So just like we did with Hadoop and HD Insight, that might mean running an open source platform on top of Azure and making sure that's a valuable product that some people want to use. And this is similar, right? We know that that's a common orchestrator. We want Azure to be a good home for that orchestrator, so that people who are invested in that environment can bring their workloads to Azure. But that doesn't really say anything about the capabilities of either or how it compares to Service Fabric or anything like that. So I think, as Mark said, we're continuing to invest in Service Fabric heavily, and we still think it's it's an excellent environment for your workloads, especially when you start talking about things like, orchestration is becoming more and more commoditized.
Yes.
Right? Where anything can orchestrate containers at this point. App Services is talking about doing container orchestration. So now the question is, what are the capabilities of those orchestrators, and is there anything that actually helps you write your applications in a way that will work well in this sort of distributed, scaled out world? And we think Service Fabric is particularly valuable and there because we spend a lot of time going up the stack and giving you these APIs for actually writing your services.
You still have a lot of work to do when you're on Kubernetes in terms of figuring out your own pieces.
I have to integrate discovery, I have to integrate naming. They've done some work with AKS to make at least the control plane highly available, but that doesn't really tell you about how making your app highly available.
And some people want to do that.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
That's the direction. But I mean, we just want to make sure that we got, the investment on Service Fabric will continue to be.
Yeah, in some sense, it's a do-it-yourself versus integrated kind of offering, right?
Yeah.
Service Fabric is the integrated offering. We've solved a bunch of these problems, and we've gone up the stack in terms of programming models and additional value that we provide. But if you want to kind of, weld a bunch of things together yourself, and you're invested in that sort of environment, then that's another offering that Azure wants to make sure works well on Azure, and that people who want to work in that environment can come to Azure and feel good about their workloads running there. So, good question though. We're going to get that one a lot.
And also Service Fabric is open source, right?
Parts. Only
Parts,
the top level programming model stuff today, and we're working on making more of it.
Yes, we're certainly going that direction. Yes, more of it will be.
Right.
Any time frame for Fabric spanning regions?
So just to be very clear to everybody, that's already supported. You can totally do that today. It's just that we don't give you a good template or experience for doing it. There are some templates floating around out there that show you how to set it up so that Service Fabric will span multiple regions. There's also ones out there for if you don't really need the multi-region failover and you want to use Azure Zones concept, which exists now. But so you stay in a region, but you pick up a little bit of additional HA. There are templates out there for all of those. We just need to do a better job of putting them out there and promoting them and explaining some of the differences that you'd see. But yeah, that's a fully supported scenario. So go nuts.
Okay, I think it's a repeat of another question we had before. Is it possible to have service notification filter matched events posted directly to a queue?
Yeah, there isn't today. You'd have to listen and post them yourself.
You need a service to do that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Merson asked about, Istio and Envoy, yes. Okay, so we've actually been working with Lyft pretty closely on this for the last few months. So we're pretty heavily invested in Envoy right now. We started a project to port Envoy over to Windows, along with Lyft and Google and a few other folks. So yeah, the long-term plan for this, you asked about reverse proxy. The long-term plan for this is we want to eventually make Envoy the de facto proxy on Service Fabric. Yes, thank you. Now it's much more exciting now.
Well, nobody can see it.
It's not displaying.
Don't worry about it. Keep going.
Yeah, so the reverse proxy will evolve into something more like Istio, where you have a full service mesh, an ingress proxy, and sidecar proxies that kind of handle routing for you. So a lot of that will evolve quite a bit. So it'll go from just being a centralized reverse proxy to actually having sidecars sitting along with your services and an ingress proxy for smarter routing. So eventually the issues that we talked about earlier with the Azure load balancer and having to probe your services when they shut down, that will ultimately be kind of supplemented with a ingress proxy based on Envoy that handles a lot of that work for you. So yeah, we're definitely going in that direction and very much aware of Istio. So keep an eye out for that.
And I just posted as well, there's another interesting project that we're doing that's related with work with a guy on the field with a reverse proxy called Traffic. And I just posted his GitHub account, and it's still the early days, but it's another example where he's actually working pretty well to make Service Fabric work with that alternative. So we're pretty focused on these sort of things. Okay, where do we get to?
Just wanted to make sure that because it's really awesome that you are implementing the Envoy concept and stuff like that. So, but is it going to support the standard Service Fabric application model, or am I forced to switch to the containers to be able to benefit from this new concept?
No, you won't have to switch to containers necessarily. We're still kind of fleshing out that plan. At least the ingress proxy part will definitely, it's going to be completely agnostic to what you're running, so that won't matter. The full service mesh, there will likely be a way to set it up with the existing model. We'll probably tune it a little bit towards containers just because of that sidecar model. It makes a little more sense. But I don't foresee it being impossible to use with the current application model either.
It might be one of
Awesome,
those things
thanks.
where some mode gives you more benefits or lets you opt in more fully.
Yeah,
while the
or
other one
it'll
doesn't.
do a little more automatic setup for you.
Right.
But it should still be possible. There's no reason it wouldn't be.
Okay, I made a Service Fabric project mainly based on Actors in C#. Now there are some devs that would like to contribute to my project, but they only know Python. Is there any way they can use the code and skills?
Well, one of the ways that we've seen people mix and match languages inside of Service Fabric is to use the concept of the guest executables. So they could write a kind of sidecar service or some other service that does use something like HTTP to talk to your service or other services or the Service Fabric platform, and be able to do work that way. We've seen people mix and match languages like that. That's one way to do it. I don't know how good Iron Python is these days, but theoretically that would work.
I guess you could do that, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, in fact, I'm now thinking about it. A couple of years ago, someone did do.
Somebody
Iron
did something with Iron Python
they
and
have
F#
integration.
and a couple other CLR languages. So
Yeah,
technically that
if
should
CLR
work.
supported, it should work.
If it's CLR supported,
I've seen
it should
F#.
work. There should be bindings. I've just never tried
It
it.
was
So
F#, wasn't it?
yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Someone
F#.
integrated F# with Service Fabric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
So I would say if you want to do the super crazy here be dragons thing, you could look at something like Iron Python if that's still going. But the only other thing you could do is to have them write their own services that live in guest XEs that run in the same cluster and then can interact with your services over HTTP and interact with the platform over HTTP. That's the most common solution that I see.
Okay, are there other ways to run a Service Fabric service as a service account rather than putting username and config? We're hoping some form of Windows authentication. We want to clarify, we want to use integrated auth on a DB connection. Is this on-premise? If this is on-premise with Windows Server, you can run a process under a Windows account or a machine account.
TMSA is also.
And group managed account, and that will directly run underneath those credentials, and then you can do integrated auth through to your DB connection. So on-premise, yes, AD integration, Active Directory integration is fully there.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing. Is it is on-prem. The question there, what we've seen so far is how to run the account or run the service underneath a different account is that you put it into the config and we're passing in username and password. So as far as running a microservice as a different account than network service on-premise, are there some docos out there on how to do that? I guess we just
You
didn't
got to
see.
do a group managed account, yes?
Yeah,
A group managed account means that you don't have to worry about username and password authentication. That account name just gets
The server backend server handles the pass.
server and password manages all that. So have you tried using group managed accounts?
A group managed account, we can look into it. Right now, like this is similar to running an app pool in IIS as a service account. I'm sort of looking at it as a similar way. So
Group managed accounts required you to have Windows Server 2012 R2 and above.
Yes.
that we do.
So if you have that and above, use group managed accounts. That's by far the best way. Because
Okay.
then you have to manage passwords or anything else like that. You just put the account inside there and all the passwords get managed for you.
Yeah.
I'll post a link for that. It's in the docs.
Okay,
But if
thank you.
If you can't understand this too much, or you have to do a call into help support, and I'll walk you through it.
Awesome, thank you.
But I'll post a link in the docs. But yes, can we roll back deployment on Service Fabric?
So yeah, I mean, that's normally automatic is what would happen is something goes wrong during the deployment and then it gets picked up by the health model, it gets turned into an error, and then the error gets detected. If it doesn't clear itself, it automatically rolls back.
Maybe he's asking about a version that you deployed Service Fabric. Can you go back?
Yeah, I mean, maybe if that's your question, then so you've already rolled out one version and you want to go back, that's just another upgrade. You can just upgrade to whatever target you want. We call them upgrade because Service Fabric doesn't really understand version numbers. They're just strings. So you could put, apple and banana, and we don't know which of those is version 1 or version 2. So you can always target a different version and do another upgrade to go back to something. But if there's something that's causing the deployment to be bad while it's rolling out, that should roll back automatically.
Yeah, that's part of. So when you do it, when you register your application, when you provision it, you give it a version number. So if you go look in Service Fabric Explorer under your application type, you'll see all the different versions that you have registered, and you can arbitrarily upgrade from any one of those to any other one. So while the upgrade's rolling out, we'll do an automated rollback if health checks fail, but if the upgrade completes, you can then come back in and say, well, now I want to take the application and upgrade it to some other version. You can upgrade it back to the previous version at any time if you want.
Okay, Jonathan, next one.
This one's a little cut off.
You gotta expand it.
So I'm using Service Fabric to orchestrate my Docker containers, and I have a Service Fabric service type that runs a Docker image. I want to be able to pass command parameters to the container when it starts up. I'm hoping to launch 1 to n instance of the containers and different parameters each time.
Yeah, that feature's not there right now. We're working on it.
Yeah.
So we're working on the feature that will come, I think, in the next release. I'm pretty sure that you can provide a command line parameter options. I'm very sure it's in the next release. That you provide command line options to how you launch a Docker container. So then you have complete control. So yes, wait for the next release for that exciting feature. Where do we get to?
What is the recommended way to get performance data from SF tracking message flows through services and such? What do you think, Deep?
What do you think of that one, Deep?
So, make sure we do.
I mean, performance counter information, if you're asking
But he's talking about messaging specifically between services. So there's like,
performance data for Service Fabric.
but the second part says tracking message flows. So I'm assuming he's just looking at like understanding the remoting there between different services. So the recommended path for that today would be to use the App Insights SDK, where you can install 2 kinds of Nougats, one like depending on the kind of workflow that you have in your cluster. So that would give you a breakdown of what's happening between all of your services and track all the messaging that's taking place and allow you to like build an app map, as well as get you data on all the response telemetry between the services. So you'd be able to get the specific metrics on response times and how much time it's actually taking for messages to get across your cluster. Is there anything beyond that that you're specifically looking to get? Not with that Nougat. So, sorry, he just followed up and asked if manual instrumentation is required. So if you install that Nougat and you're actually running in .NET or you're running C# code, then no, you don't need to actually add any further instrumentation. As long as you've hooked up the Nougat correctly, I'll paste the link in the chat to the Nougat that also includes the installation and setup instructions. You do have to add like 1 or 2 lines of code. But unless you need to get further info than what it already provides, you shouldn't need to actually change anything else.
Is that the App Insights?
Yeah, that's the App Insights SDK Nougat specifically for Service Fabric remoting.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What if you're using HTTP though? They have one for HTTP.
Yeah, for HTTP, like that's just the generic App Insights SDK. Should be able to pick up and give you like all iLogger response telemetry back and forth.
And that's where it injects an activity ID and that flows through. So all your requests from one service to another flows an activity ID through, right?
Yes, but the issue with that one is that it doesn't understand a breakdown between like how we treat separate services in the cluster. So if you try to look at an app map or try to distinguish the source of all of those records that are coming in or the logs that are coming in, it just is able to distinguish at the application level. So you effectively just have application communicating with application. If you actually want to see service A communicating to service B and have that whole like service context piece of it, you have to use a Service Fabric specific Nougat as well.
Okay.
Okay, can we host SignalR? If you have any reference links to using SignalR and WCF as a service, hosted in Azure Service Fabric.
Well, I'm not sure about the WCF part, but you can definitely host SignalR. Where did we get with that anyways?
I have a crappy sample, which I have just pasted a link to.
That was the backplane?
It's a little, no, that one doesn't do the backplane, but it does show SignalR communication working through a stateless Service Fabric service.
Yeah, okay.
It's a little old, so you might have to update the references and stuff, but the basics are there.
Right, any plans? So we don't want to do for WCF. So hopefully that will help.
There are some WCF samples still sitting in the old classic samples
There's
branch.
WCF sample we don't focus too much on anymore. I'm not sure if SignalR with WCF, that I
don't know
experience
about,
with,
but that would just be,
I'm not sure.
yeah.
Okay, any plans, recommendations for recently announced automatic OS upgrades on VM scale sets? So yeah, so they recently announced the fact that now you can do image-based upgrades on VM scale sets. I think we announced it like earlier this week.
The answer is that currently that doesn't actually work in Service Fabric environments.
Yes,
So
we're testing it.
we're testing it out and working it out, Ben. And the thing that we're working on is exactly that, to make sure that it rolls out upgrade domain by upgrade domain, and that the orchestration works correctly in Azure so that Service Fabric can move the workloads out. Then the drives, everything gets wiped, and then it comes back. We're also trying to talk with them about not flattening the temp disk and just flattening the operating system disk, because the temp disk is where we keep the state by default. So we're working on the details of that. But today, I think it actually, if you try to do it in a Service Fabric cluster, it will tell you that it's not enabled for VM scale sets running the Service Fabric extension.
Yes, it's explicitly denied.
Yeah.
But we're working on this. This is a key piece that we've been working on for a long time.
Yep, it's getting there.
Until now, still continue to use the patch orchestration application.
Yeah, that gets you most of the way, but it's not true image-based patching yet, which is what we want to get to.
But it's coming. We're working on it. Is it planned to support some sort of batch workload, that is, containers that run to completion without restarting them afterwards? Or is it something that you would not consider for Service Fabric?
I don't think we have anything quite planned for that, but it's pretty easy to set up yourself today because you can always spin up services and delete them at any time. There's just APIs for that. So I've seen people do things like you'll have a service that just kind of acts as a scheduler, and you'll say create a service, let it run, and then it can either self-delete or you can send a signal back and you can delete it that way. So I don't think we have anything planned right now for scheduler. We'll definitely we'll think about that one for sure. But it is fairly simple to implement yourself, just because it's easy enough to dynamically create and delete services on the fly.
We will make it easier eventually, but for right now, it's not too hard.
You know.
Feedback on a viewing experience. Have you enlarged our viewing experience?
It's much better.
Enlarged video no. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Antonio, there's supposed to be content on the board, but the board has decided to magically stop sharing itself, so you get to look at our faces instead.
Oh, is that what he's enjoying?
Oh, is that what it is?
Oh,
Yeah.
he's enjoying that.
Yeah, that's part of what I've been futzing around with.
Okay.
You guys keep making fun of me, but
Yeah.
I have purpose.
Compliments
Sit at the table with you, like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. How about
Sitting at
that?
the table with you. Better.
There are some empty seats. Come by.
We'll put a little image. Right, the refresh application functionality against the local dev environment is great and definitely speeds up my stateless web application deployment. Yay, good. However, only works against a single node of application has some useful stateful services that don't work unless I've got the local 5-node cluster running. And then refresh doesn't work.
Yeah, refresh only works on one node.
Are there any plans to make it work on 5-node cluster?
No plans to make it work on 5-node cluster. But you said you have stateful services that don't work unless you have a local 5-node cluster. I'm curious why they don't work.
Me too. Support couldn't figure it out. I guess the thing just doesn't spin up. It keeps showing that the service errors out. Claims it's not replicating right. Who knows what?
What's your replication?
I mean, yeah, the way that the templates, yeah, so that's the problem, right? The way the templates are set up is if you're doing it in Visual Studio, there are two parameter files for the local dev cluster, one for 1-node and one for 5-node. And the way it's set up is that when you launch on 1-node, it creates your stateful services with just one replica.
Yes.
And that's fine, because that works. You can do that. If you try to deploy 3 replicas onto a 1-node cluster, then that will fail because Service Fabric says, well, you asked for 3 and you only gave me 1 place, so no.
Oh, so
really,
if I switch that to 1, that would probably handle that.
Yeah, all you gotta do is just
Great.
set your replica set size to 1, and then it'll work fine.
Great.
Are there any Connect event announcements? Yes, in the sense that we have a number of different sessions there. Corey Sanders did a session on showing Service Fabric migrating workloads yesterday. Today, I've just posted it now. James, who works on one of the developer evangelism teams, is doing a great talk on Service Fabric and how you build out and doing more lift and shift container workloads. And then Vaz, you're doing one tomorrow, yes?
Yeah, I got one tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.
Cool. Go watch it.
Yeah.
9 a.m.
It's gonna be amazing.
It's gonna be fantastic.
Yes.
9 a.m. Pacific time.
PST.
Yes.
Oh,
9 a.m. Eastern time would be
Or
a little
PET
too
or
early.
whatever we're in right now.
Yeah. We're in standard time now.
Yes.
Normal time.
I think it's PST now. Yeah.
It's PST.
Okay.
Heard from a colleague that we demoed an SF cluster on Raspberry Pi at Ignite. Does that mean SF can support ARM? Yes, Marcin, you heard correctly about the demo. We did have a Raspberry Pi cluster at Ignite, but it did require a lot of work to be done in terms of creating a custom kernel and things like that. So at this time, we don't actually have support for ARM.
Yeah.
That's something we're looking into, and we're still deciding on, but we'll keep you updated in the next few months.
That was more of a tech demo.
Yeah, it was
And,
more of a demo.
And no, we have no great plans to reveal about Microsoft's data center plans. For
Yes,
that, you're going to need to go to Mark Rusinovich's Data Center Futures Talks,
Sorry to disappoint you, Marcia.
Yeah, and you'll find out about when we find out. So good try.
We've entered quick fire round now because we have 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes, we have 5 minutes. So we're going to have to go through these ones.
All right.
We have questions on source code management for reusable microservices across applications. When creating a branch, if we separate usable microservices, is there a relative reference that includes the branch number? You then merge and merge. How do you manage your branching and merging of microservices?
Yeah, and this gets into if you have a reusable microservice outside of the location where your application is, and we're pretty much going to have to reconstruct our solution files every time we merge, because the solution file needs to be recreated to point to that specific version. It gets to be a mess. Is there any good recommendations that you'd throw out there? Or I know this is not Service Fabric directly related, but it's how do you reuse your microservices across your applications without having multiple copies within source control?
Yeah, the original intent of the application manifest structure was to allow you to do that. But the idea is you'd have to compile these things. You compile the services into like pre-packaged services, right? So you have a package and then you reference it from your application manifest. So basically your application manifest is constructing a full application based on a bunch of services that maybe other people wrote and provided to you. So it's a little bit like building a Nougat package and then just referencing a Nougat package everywhere. Think of it that way, except it's a service, a compiled service, and you reference it from your service manifest. So it wouldn't necessarily be a project with source code in Visual Studio in a solution. It would be something that you have sitting up somewhere.
Something in the build context during the build process somewhere. I pasted another crappy sample of mine that shows picking up a bunch of service packages from some build output and then generating the application manifest out of that. So that theoretically you can have separate branches, separate build tasks, separate everything, and then consolidate an application package back out of that with a corresponding manifest. It's not fully fleshed, but it's something to look at just as a proof of concept that can definitely work.
Okay, I'll let you go with the quick fire round, but I think that's something that is challenging.
Yes,
it's
something challenging.
Yeah, agreed. Is there any guidance on using ASP.NET Core configuration settings with Service Fabric application members? So I did a thing with Mike Wasson a while back, which is up on the web somewhere, that shows you how to consume configuration packages, Service Fabric configuration packages, through the .NET Core, ASP.NET Core config loader. So look up that. That's probably the best way to do it, because then you're consuming configuration packages, which you can parameterize for application parameters in a way that's more natural to ASP.NET Core using their APIs. So I'll do a quick search, but it's up there online if you search for it.
Somewhere was mentioned that SF-Proj doesn't support package references in Service Project unless it is the SDK style CS-Proj. It's possible recommended to use SDK style projects for normal .NET 4.7 framework projects.
So SF-Proj doesn't support references unless it's the SDK style CS-Proj. Yeah, that's probably true. I would imagine so, because otherwise we wouldn't know what to do with it. Yeah. Is it recommended to use SDK style projects for normal .NET 4.7 projects? Well, you could. The only difference,
you can reference them. They're just not going to be service packages. Right. You can still have libraries and stuff.
There's one tag in the CS project that we add which says is Service Fabric project, and it's set to true. Which, if it's not actually being used in Service Fabric, I don't think it's going to make a difference. So you could do it, if you wanted to.
But I mean, there's no problem with having random CS projects that are not service packages. You just won't be able to add them as service references.
Yeah, you'll be put them in your solution file.
Yeah, they'll be in the solution.
Yeah, they'll build and everything. They just won't be packaged up into an application package.
So I think that's fine.
Yeah, so you can put them in your solution, but not in the application.
Right, okay. And that would be expected.
Yeah.
Schedule task service, same sort of deal along with the batch question. We know that's a scenario we're going to target eventually.
Raspberry Pi.
ARM thing, got it. Cool.
When I store data in a stateful service, can I specify whether it's kept in memory or persistent to disk, or is handled by the service automatically?
So that's handled automatically, and today the data is stored both in memory and on disk, and we might flush it out of memory and keep it only on disk if you're under memory pressure, but today we do all of that automatically, and it's both always. Can only that service retrieve the data by key, or would others be able to retrieve it? The data is kind of local per service partition, and typically only that partition can read and write that data locally, but you could always back it up and restore it to some other service and read it from there. And you can always have that service expose an API that any other service could access and to get at the data. But they're the one that is reading that shard of data. They're in charge of it naturally.
What's your recommendation for writing a batch processor using Service Fabric? We need to be able to work through results, restore procedure, and do some processing for each individual record. This process will have a high volume. It will need to also be multi-threaded and not bump. We'll have issues with locking.
So it depends a little bit on what the work is that you're going to do. There's a sample that we're going to be putting out there about a pool management service where you can submit jobs to kind of a manager, and the manager will send them on to a pool of services kind of in the back, and that pool can grow and shrink. It would look something like that, where you can have kind of batches of various sizes or down to individual items that then get dispatched into this pool of services. So I would look for that sample.
Is that using the actor model, or is that using stateful services?
That one that we're doing is using stateful services or stateless services, but it really does depend a little bit on how long running the particular item is and stuff
Shouldn't
like
be that long. Could be less than 5 minutes. Could be up to maybe 20.
That's
pretty small.
Longer than I would normally have an actor method executing. That's actually a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
IronPython is in the .NET Foundation. Thank you, Ben.
Right.
So I didn't entirely make up the fact that existed.
Is there any documentation for service extensions used by traffic on Service Fabric?
No, but
probably not.
Yeah, I don't think we really talk about extending the manifest that often.
Yeah.
Well, this is the traffic work. I think that you need to watch Johnny's blog about what he's doing now. He's working through it slowly.
Yeah, that was just a way to get tags.
Yeah.
Some way to consume tags, but generally it's not something we do.
With Patch Orchestration app, is there a way to see updates using Azure Logs OMS?
Wait,
Well,
did you forget Greg's?
That's a dupe.
As a duplicate.
Oh,
So it's a dupe. Sorry.
okay, got it.
Thanks, Skype.
so the application just runs like any other application in your cluster, so you technically would have to hook it up to wherever you're getting your traces, but once you have it hooked up, you should be able to see its traces as well as write out any ones that you may want to instrument.
Maybe that's something we can figure out how to improve.
Fair enough.
So that it emits that stuff by default.
Yeah,
As normal.
fair enough.
Okay, jump down here. So we're going to run a service via create service async and have it shut down after done a process. No, so you'll have to delete it. The service can delete itself after run async is completed doing whatever it needs to do, but we don't actually delete it after run async completes because we don't know whether you have endpoints open or something like that. So we don't do it automatically.
So if you wanted to do that, you'd have, run async, you do your stuff in a loop until it's done, and then you just return. That's what will happen today. It'll keep running.
But the service will stay up.
The service object will keep running. What you do instead of just returning is you do await, Fabric Client, Service Manager, delete service async, give your own service name,
and it's gone.
And then it'll clean itself up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I think are we close to a couple more?
Yeah, we have a few.
Almost there. Whether automatic OS upgrades recently announced from VMSS will work fine. Yeah, not yet today. We're still finishing that integration. We really want that to work. It'll be really important. And yes, Ben, we do want them to not flatten the temp disk because why? That's not even a part of the operating system, but someday.
Any update to fix CLI PowerShell configuration for asset durability settings?
If your node name doesn't match your VMSS name, it doesn't work.
So,
That's interesting. I wonder if that's a recent change because I've definitely set it up where they're random. But maybe post that one if you haven't posted. Yeah, put that one in the GitHub issues list.
I gave them the line number they had to change, and they hot potatoed it between a bunch of developers.
Okay.
Oh,
Send the issue list.
Send it to Matt.
Yeah.
yeah.
Great.
he does things like he does painful things to developers.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, boss. I'm a very nice person, really.
No, he's really.
But yeah, send us that issue list. And we'll
You have to say he's a nice person.
Then you know.
Yeah. When you
Moving on.
Yeah.
Is there any way to create an entry point for .NET Core application code package that will work on both Windows and Linux?
Yeah, so we're working on that today. No, there's not an easy way. You should be able to just do .NET and then your DLL. The problem is because .NET, the exe isn't in your code package, we fail it because we say you're trying to run an exe that doesn't exist in your code package. So we're going to fix that so that you can at least run .NET and then you'll be able to do cross-platform packages that work well.
As it is today, you have to put it in a batch file.
Yeah, well, you have to put in a batch file, but you need a different batch file for Linux than for Windows.
Yes.
You know, shell script here and a batch there. So
And then
yeah,
then your manifest.
it's hard today, but we're going to make that a lot easier.
Is there anywhere we can ask such questions to you between these community Q&As? We have the GitHub issues page, we have Stack Overflow. You can tweet at us. You could send us an email.
You better say Azure Advisors or you're
And-
gonna get
I
hit.
wrote
Yeah, reach out to Azure Advisors.
And there's Azure Advisors, which you're welcome to join, yes,
Yeah.
which is a great place to ask.
You should definitely do that.
I do
Everybody
think-
should do that.
I do think we missed one, which was any update to fix the CLI PowerShell configuration for SF durability level settings. I'd like to know what you want fixed. So John, if you can let us know more information there, that would be good. And then I know Mark,
I'm gonna kick it off now.
yeah, Mark wants to do a bunch of surveys, so we'll look at more questions if we give time. So
Yep.
Yeah. Last one,
You guys could
don't-
probably keep answering questions.
So just real quick, you don't have issues, just questions. If it's just questions, Stack Overflow is the best place for that.
probably, yeah.
All right.
Okay, I think that's it. So, Mark,
They're working on
thank
it
you for
right
your
now.
time,
Yep.
and we'll see you. Actually, this is November, isn't it? So we have one more this year.
It is November. Yeah.
Do we?
Do.
Should we discuss that?
Oh, maybe.
Well, it'll be like end of December, so
Will it be?
Wait,
it might
yeah,
be
it's
on
basically
Christmas,
Christmas week.
We'll figure that out.
We'll figure that
It'd be
out.
nice if we could hold one in December, and if we can, but we'll figure it out and get
Yeah,
back to you.
we'll figure it out.
I think if you find these useful, we're about to find out. Based on this survey.
Based on this
tell us
survey.
whether we'll do December or not.
The fourth,
If you want us to come in during Christmas.
the
that's the
fourth
question.
Thursday of December is the 28th of December, so that's going to be a little
It's
challenging.
the third.
Or
Thursday.
third.
Third
Thursday.
Thursday is the 21st of December, which still is also going
That's
to be
pretty challenging.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Well.
But yeah, we'll figure out whether or not we're going to have one, and then let you guys know. Watch the blog, the team blog, for that announcement or
That's
non-announcement.
great responses here.
Oh, okay.
You guys don't see them, but I see them. Or maybe you do.
No, we do.
Okay.
Well, no, not as updated as yours though.
Thanks to everyone for coming
Yes.
this week. It's always good
Bring your
to talk
friends.
with you. Hope
Yes, happy Turkey Day.
hope you got some good question answers.
Yeah.
Pardon your turkeys.
Any? How many more questions are you?
We got two more.
Two more? Okay, hang in, folks. Don't all.
Be patient, man. Be patient, man.
No, I just want to make sure we didn't tell everybody to sign off before the survey completed.
Right.
Yes.
Haven't left yet. Good.
'Cause
Yes, very good.
This helps us decide.
Yeah. This helps us figure out how to tune.
How to tune in.
I'm cutting some of them.
Still need a
down
both
close.
option. Yeah.
Oh, did we not get a both?
No, it's okay.
All right. We'll get that next time.
But good feedback
Good.
again. Whit, sorry we're slow.
And we'll get the.
Greg's doing the countdown. Come on, man.
Neither option. I came here. I didn't come here.
Well, maybe just to look at us.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Did you
one
come
guy,
here to
one
listen or-
person definitely
Did
agreed.
you come
with
here to
that.
listen or ask questions? I was not here.
Yeah.
You never saw me.
The answer is no.
Did you come here to A or B?
No.
Okay, we like that too.
Okay.
And
Okay,
one
so
more, last one, folks.
there's still a few
Thank you
people
so
not
much.
members of Azure Advisors. Should definitely get them.
Yeah, they should join.
Oh, yeah.
If they're not in, should be in. Is it?
It's a big question.
The big one.
Big question.
The end,
I'm glad we asked this at
Come
the
on.
end this time.
Yeah,
That's-
makes a little more
Yeah,
sense.
last time we asked this before.
At the beginning.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would have been fun.
Oh. I thought Matt was voting no.
We're hitting it out of the park, folks.
Yeah,
Excellent.
you're not
Be
voting.
honest, though, be
You're not
honest.
voting in this room.
Yeah, yeah,
We're not allowed to vote, right?
Be honest, be honest. We
Yeah,
won't
yeah.
die.
It's anonymous, so.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, storms out.
Yeah,
Yeah, don't let the door hit you.
Greg's countdown is finished.
All right, everyone. Thanks for
Thank
a
you.
great
Thanks,
session.
guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it. Take
Thank
care.
you.
See you next
Yeah.
time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.